this USC game is huge because you could have the bird in hand of, and if we can get the schedule up on the screen, that'd be great too for the folks watching at home. We've talked about this a million times at this point, but this if you find a way to win this game, Washington next week's a winnable game. Michigan State, I know it's a rivalry game. I know weird things have happened. That's a team you should beat and probably do so by a couple scores. Purdue is what they are. Northwestern is what they are. That's going to be a Michigan-friendly crowd at Wrigley Field. And Maryland could be a bit of a dogfight here just before the Ohio State game. But the runway that getting this USC win would mean for this program in terms of getting into the college football playoff in a year where, now Penn State is a 2-loss team. Texas is a 2-loss team. Those two teams could win or could lose more games. 10 wins, Notre Dame. 10 wins with this Michigan schedule, especially with one of those losses being to Oklahoma, is probably going to get you in. And if you win this game at USC, you have a chance to have more than 10 wins. A lot of work to still do, obviously, but let's just set the stage for this game this weekend and what it would mean to Michigan to go out there and find a way.
Yeah, it would mean a ton because this is, again, you got by Nebraska, right? If you're going to lose one of Nebraska and Oklahoma before the year, you would have picked Oklahoma because it's not a Big Ten game. So you get that out of the way. Now you win the one at Nebraska. They didn't look great. They looked solid at times. It was closer than it should have been. I still don't think Nebraska's very good. They play at Maryland. I think they're a 6.5 point favorite this week, if I'm not mistaken. So that's an interesting line to me. But this is the one, right, guys? And you've got to look at this and say, okay, there's a possibility that you're going to lose maybe at home to Washington. That's a tricky, good team, especially again coming back from the coast. Michigan State, they better not lose that game. Maryland that's not a game. I don't think they're going to lose that game, fellas. I just don't. Against a freshman quarterback, against that Michigan defense, I think it's going to be really tough for them. So this is it. It's this and it's Ohio State, and you look at these two and you say, okay. It's all right there. Ohio State, to me, looks more complete than they have in a while. And that's saying something because they were national champions last year, right, fellas? But they are playing great complementary football. We'll see what happens when they play better teams. I don't think Texas was the litmus test that everybody thought it would be. I really don't think that highly of Illinois either. So I think they're probably going to take care of business. But the way they are doing it, they kind of look like Michigan did from 2021 to 23. And I know that's blasphemy here, but the way they're playing good complementary football, they don't make mistakes when they go play action. They got some elite receivers. Maybe, we'll see what happens with Sayin when he gets against a better pass rush. But to me, like you said, Anthony, this is the one that's really going to tell us and could really get the fan base excited about what's going on here going forward because it's all there in front of them if they win it.
Yeah, Ohio State used to be built to win 50-20, and now they're built to win 24-6 like they did, in their last game. Were they off last weekend? I forget. But
Minnesota 42-3.
Or sorry, the Minnesota game that was a doozy. But their last kind of bigger game, they go out west to Washington and win that one that way, and you're kind of thinking that like, okay, this is a little bit of a different type of team that Ryan Day's morphed his program into, and I give him credit for it, to a certain extent. But that's going to be the challenge. But they have to come here. You beat them down there last year when you were zombie Michigan with no offense. So you certainly have a chance no matter what happens here to beat them. But, you want to go into that game with one loss is my point. And you look at the USC game, like Marlon Klein said today, as a playoff game. And really the next 3 games are probably your 3 toughest before you play Ohio State. So it's kind of like a 3-game mini playoff that you got to sweep, or at least that's the goal. And I think you're better probably than all 3 teams. Vegas would say so over USC on a neutral field. They're going on the road and they're 2.5-point underdogs, but you're probably a better football team than them, or more complete at this point in the season. They've looked really good at times. They also struggled when they came to the Midwest and played against Illinois. And then Washington, is certainly beatable. Michigan State on the road, certainly beatable. So you win those 3, and I feel great about early and in mid-November before you play Ohio State. So it's just that important. As you said, Anthony, the bird in hand, like knowing that you have a buffer to work with as the season goes on, and knowing that you're not Notre Dame where you have your 2 losses in your first 2 games and they have to run the table to even have a shot. So if Michigan could get that going, they're number 15 in the country. I know the rankings don't really matter, and the ones that matter aren't put out by the same people that have them out right now, the AP. But no one's really talking about Michigan. They're just kind of flying under the radar, playing their schedule. They had the bye last week. They had the Nebraska win. People aren't super impressed, but this team has a lot of room to grow. They can get better and better. I think we're waiting for that breakout game from the Michigan Wolverines, like in 2021, when they were just kind of what they were earlier in the season. In the Rutgers game, where they got like 1 first down in the second half at home, and then they go and dominate at Wisconsin, exercise some demons. They hadn't won there since 2001. They hadn't they haven't won a game on the West Coast since 1989. Like this would be a hell of a flight home for them if they're able to pull this thing off. They're going to be talking about smashing narratives, breaking, bucking some trends in history and all these sorts of things, gaining a lot of confidence. That would be one confident Michigan football team on that, 4-hour flight home or whatever it is. They're going to be on a nice, charter plane. We'll be on the commercial flights, but they're going to be a confident bunch coming back to play Washington. And they can start to pick up some steam if they get a win this weekend, but it's not going to be easy.
They were 4-1 at this point last year, and this has been a talking point a lot over the last few weeks. 4-1 last year, and then things stagnate, and you ultimately struggle out to 5-5. Now, I don't think that's going to happen with this team, only because the schedule doesn't have the challenges on it that last year's did. But this is a game Saturday that is a coin flip game. If you don't bring it next weekend, Washington's a team that I think is capable of. I don't even think that's a trap game. I just think that's another tough game to play. Maybe not as tough as some of the ones they played last year. So the question I have is this, and I wrote, and this is kind of where we segue maybe into final thoughts about the Wisconsin game. In Michigan's 2 Big Ten games so far, at Nebraska, against Wisconsin, the final score, it really is a couple plays away from being a much more lopsided effort. Certainly at Nebraska, and then this past weekend, you could probably look to 4 or 5, maybe even more than that, plays against Wisconsin, where really outside of that opening drive, it was dominant, but self-inflicted wounds kept it a little closer than it needed to be. And I guess my biggest question about this team, maybe one that they will answer on Saturday against USC, or they can take steps to answering, is that in every position group, and in a couple of these games recently, there are these individual moments of really good stuff. I'll even say greatness in some areas, but it hasn't all come together in sync yet. And my question to you guys would be, in the here and now, do we think that is simply who they are because of what how the program is run, how they're coached? Maybe, these certainly aren't the clinical Jim Harbaugh Wolverines that they were a couple of years ago. Or specifically on offense, is this just a young group that is still figuring out what they have? And really, I think when you rewatch Saturday's game, despite a few drops, despite a few issues in short yardage situations, I think you come out of that game with a few more things to hang your hat on the offensive side of the ball when it comes to Donovan McCulley and Andrew Marsh. So I think this team will be defined by if all of those things can come together in sync, because at times all of the questions have been answered this year, but very rarely has it happened in unison.
Yeah, and what I wrote yesterday about the receiving core, it's not that they put up good yardage against a bad secondary. You would have been disappointed if they hadn't put up the yardage. It was the contested catches that McCulley and Marsh were making, the back shoulder Marsh catch, the sideline catch by McCulley, the yards after catch by McCulley on the slant for a touchdown, things like that are really exciting. And then when you get Hogan Hansen back too, guys, I think people are sleeping on the fact that Michigan's got a really good third option, receiving option, and a tight end that just hasn't played a whole lot. We saw glimpses of it last year. We saw the sideline catch where he high pointed it against Central Michigan. And this guy can really add to the room. I asked Sharon Moore, I think last week, or I think it was actually Steve Casula. I said, what can you do with 2 tight ends out there like Marlon Klein and Hogan Hansen that you can't do when there's just one? And he said it opens up a world of possibilities, especially if you've got 2 receiving options now like McCulley and Marsh. And I think Marsh will continue to get better. So Samaj Morgan is what he is, right? He's going to be that screen guy. So, and that and he has that role. He plays it well. If he's got to catch more passes, obviously, but that is his role, and they have gained a lot of yardage on it. People complain about that, right? The little flare, the sideline passes, and they've been picking up, I think, 8 yards a carry, I think, on average. So no complaints here. But as far as the other stuff, the concern I have is the tackles. And I watched them, and I watched Andrew Sprague, and I was really disappointed by the step backward he took. Now, he's a young guy, too, playing in his, fifth start or sixth start or something like that. So maybe he's still learning, but there were things at this point in your career that you shouldn't be doing on a football field, whether it's false steps or getting out over your skis or in pass protection or whatever, that needs to be a little bit better. Maybe it was just a bad game for him and he was off. Evan Link has not graded out well at left tackle. I think, 50-something, Clay? Didn't we put up a post on that today? For the season, I think he's in the 50s, which is below average. So something like that. So it's got to be better. And I think we're going to see against a defense that's not great. This USC defense got shredded by Illinois. Granted, it was a road game, but there's some speed on that side of the ball too. This is going to be the game that really tells us, I think, and can tell us, okay, can Michigan be that complete team here? Can they be a team that can sneak into that top two or bust up the Ohio State duo at the top of the Big Ten, and they can do it by playing a complete game. And I really think that's the only way that they can win this game. It's not going to be a Nebraska type game. If they play like they did at Nebraska and they give away some opportunities and make some of the mistakes they did there, then I think they're going to lose.
Yeah, Evan Link, just looking it up right now as you were talking, 59.2 on the season overall. Tackles with not a very good game against Wisconsin. I thought, Bryce Underwood, I think, was only pressured on 18% of his dropbacks, but it felt like every single pressure was in a big moment, right? 2nd and 5 on the plus side of the field. And then, it's a big loss. And I think there was a 3rd down in there. And the drops came at rough moments as well, right before half when you're trying to get things going. I mean, I think there were 34 seconds or whatever it was, but you had a big gain there on a run pass option that Bryce Underwood made a great read on, finds this guy, perfectly places the ball. Kendrick Bells was at a key moment as well. Max Bredeson's the most key at being a 3rd down, so that killed a drive. So kind of that clunkiness of the misassignment here, or just an absolute whiff a couple times by Andrew Sprague at the right tackle spot as well. Blown up in the line of scrimmage. Justice Haynes, I think, loss of 6 or 7 yards or whatever. It's like just stuff that really shouldn't happen. I know you have to give Wisconsin some credit for it. But I do think the offense continues to take a step forward. And Anthony, what you mentioned with some things to hang your hat on that this offense has a year ago, and really comparing to last year, that's no standard or bar that you're looking to be anywhere near. But they had nothing that really worked. Like, what would you do? You were in those Sunday or Monday meetings in your Kurt Campbell and Sharon Moore and that offensive staff. What are you saying? Like, okay, let's run a little bit more of this and that. They're just searching for stuff. Like this year, you're seeing more playmakers emerge. You're seeing a pretty talented group on offense overall. When coming into the year, you kind of looked at it and said, all right, you have some good running backs. You have a freshman quarterback who's really talented. Who are the other, difference maker type guys on offense? You're starting to see that there's some possibilities there at wide receiver, tight end, when you get healthier at tight end as well. And then you have the defense that you do. So it's growing. It's coming along a little bit. I will say, Nebraska and Wisconsin have like opposite defenses. I thought Nebraska's secondary was really good, but the defensive line was not good. I thought Wisconsin's defensive front was pretty good. Michigan still rushed for 175 there. And I thought the secondary was really bad. But like you said, they still made a lot of plays down the field, plays with the ball in their hands as well. We saw Marsh get after it after the catch. We saw Donovan McCulley get some yardage after the catch, even Samaj Morgan. The Marlon Klein had Zach Marshall had one, and then Marlon Klein had the screen where he hurdles the guy. Guys are making some plays. So I like the direction they're headed overall, but the short yardage concerned me. I think you went, by my count, it was 3 of 6 in short yardage, and 2 of the successes were at the goal line where you have 3 or 4 shots at it. When, in the middle of the field, you don't necessarily. The one where it's 3rd and 2, they throw, and then they go for it on 4th, when if you're going to go for it, I would just run twice.
Great.
So still some things that are a little clunky in there. It's funny, like in 2023, Michigan in short yardage, they go 6 for 6. Now, a good team, a Michigan standard team, probably 5 for 6 I'm fine with. I mean, no one's going to be as good as that team was with Blake Corum in 22, same thing. really 21 with Haskins as well. So, but 3 of 6, a lot of meat on the bone there, a lot of meat on the bone in a lot of areas. But I do like the direction they're heading. I feel like Chip Lindsey is starting to figure out more and more what this team can run, what they like. And I thought with Sharon Moore back, Chip Lindsey proved that they're going to still stay pretty open offensively there. So I thought that, was an encouraging sign at the very least.